Before you start typing yes in the comments, please just hear me out. For a long-lived storied franchise like The Legend of Zelda, with era-defining titles within its own series and across gaming as a whole, it was inevitable that graphical and technological innovation would make older games feel obsolete. But even with two of the best-selling installments dropping within the last decade, there are still many who consider some older games to be the series' best, to which there is a common rebuttal. They're old, you're old, and your opinion is irrelevant because nostalgia. But that lazy conclusion leaves me wanting more from a discussion about my favorite video game series. So what exactly is nostalgia? How does it take form when we interact with video games? Does Zelda have a nostalgia problem? And if so, is that a bad thing? Recorded sentiments of nostalgia can be found in works as early as Homer's Odyssey, and it's from two Greek words that nostalgia derives its name. Nostos meaning homecoming, and algos meaning pain. Literally, the suffering evoked by the desire to return to one's place of origin. Our understanding of nostalgia has since evolved from its late 17th century origin as a medical malady through the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries as a type of melancholia or depression associated with homesickness, to its current uniquely separate definition as a longing or wistfulness for a place we can never return to, the past. Our understanding of nostalgia is still deepening as researchers continue to identify unique types of nostalgia. As a young medium, video games have only recently entered their nostalgic phase, to which the almost 40-year-old Zelda series has a peculiar relationship. The first type of nostalgia I would consider rather controversial: implicit nostalgia. In Ryan Lizardi's Mediated nostalgia, he contends, unsuccessfully from my view, that because Zelda games have historically relied on similar game and narrative structures, this in essence makes them remakes, and therefore inherently nostalgic experiences. I'll leave the full quote up for you to criticize as you see fit, but to me it's clear there are pedantic untruths, as well as games within the series that don't fit the mold of either story or gameplay as described here, and the games are generally designed as standalone experiences. However, the earlier examples of nostalgia, specifically restorative and reflective nostalgia, do seem deeply embedded in the Zelda franchise, especially now. Restorative nostalgia focuses on homecoming or rebuilding a past experience, and most accurately reflects the segment of the fandom sentimental about the previous era of Zelda begotten by a link to the past and Ocarina of Time, an era we are unlikely to return to. Alternatively, the new open-air games are built on reflective nostalgia, which focuses on longing, the emotional impact of the past. An apt paraphrase of this concept might be going back to your roots in order to revive a particular feeling. Historical nostalgia also plays a large role in the Zelda series, as access to the series' oldest games, as they were or remade, is easier than ever thanks to the online capabilities of the Switch and soon-to-be Switch 2. The oldest and newest Zelda games, and many in between, are now playable on the same system, weaving players into the historical fabric of past players that experienced these games and their technological limits long before them. But as a concept deeply connected to emotion, appeals to nostalgia are not just triggered by our experience of playing an old game, but by the shared historical aspects across the games themselves, specifically the music. Take the boss music of Colgera or Link's house theme or many of the story beats in Twilight Princess, and you'll find that they connect to other instances of the Rito, or Link's domestic arrangements, or stories that do have similar structures enhanced by similar music. And then there's personal nostalgia, fondness for our own autobiographical memories, which may be defined by our particular Zelda title, and which is perhaps the easiest to undermine when debating the series' best game. It's old, you're old, why wish for a past you can never return to? This bittersweet paradox is perhaps best embodied by Ocarina of Time, a story about letting go of the past or returning to it to find yourself changed, which simultaneously birthed some of the series' most memorable music and gave us the first cinematic story about growing up, deeply connecting us to it emotionally. Those elements seem timeless, but those who consider it the series' best game are lambasted for their nostalgia bias. However, as I've discussed in other videos, this emotional connection is generally par for the course when experiencing Zelda at a formative age, and not exclusive to Ocarina of Time. What's also important to consider is that when we interact with an old game, we don't just experience nostalgia, or even one particular type or another. We move back and forth between them like notes on an ocarina, stringing together the symphony of our memories. So yes, Zelda, the long-standing self-referential series, is, frankly, deeply steeped in nostalgia. Not only from players' personal perspectives, but also within and across games. As such, it's hard to remove nostalgia from any conversation about the franchise. But is that so bad? Well, as it turns out, nostalgia as a concept has come a long way from its 17th century conception as a disease to a largely positive emotion. In fact, nostalgia is tied to social connection, a concept that the original Legend of Zelda was built on. And this connection is not limited to our memories of others, but also to our past selves, like looking back at our young Link versions to see how far we've come. And our nostalgic gaming memories usually have the games as a backdrop to what are actually fond memories about family and friends. Reflecting on these past connections increases our own sense of self, lends a sense of meaning to our lives, spurs us to repair old connections, establish new connections, and foster current ones. What's important to remember is the reflection, to integrate those past memories with our current self to move forward renewed. While this may lead to cognitively biasing our past memories, the rose-tinted glasses effect, the alternative may be worse, stuck in the past and lonely. Nostalgia also drives the old heads like me to play video games with their children, exposing an entirely new generation to the Zelda franchise, who can go on their own adventures, slay their own demon dragons, and debate which game is the best for years to come. Conversations around the franchise fascinate me, and I love teasing apart why people feel the way they do about particular games as much as I love teasing apart particular games. And nostalgia is a topic that, while I think it's lame to accuse someone of appealing to it as an excuse not to engage with their argument, it turns out to be a much more nuanced reason for why we play games, like games, and share games. Is the original Legend of Zelda or Ocarina of Time the best game ever? Maybe not, but you could have a soft spot for something you've outgrown, just as you can see greatness in something that is outdated. Reveling in the spectacle of Zelda's grand adventure, connecting the series to positive memories of our youth, sharing those experiences with others, the meaningful aspects of our time here, even if they are largely nostalgic, that's what I'm after from a discussion about my favorite video game series. I've got even more in-depth looks at the series, such as this one in the works, so if you enjoy these deeper dives into both the games and the conversations around them, consider subscribing to the channel. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your favorite Zelda memory. Thank you for watching. Now go play your favorite Zelda.